Alex Eala, she's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I told her that. I was like, dude, I'm so excited for this doubles because I'm about to have like the most support I've ever had.
She's much more experienced than I am. I don't think it was an easy win for her, so it's very difficult.
The red clay of Roland Garros had seen champions crowned and legends broken across more than a century of tennis. But on that May afternoon in Paris, Court Philippe Chatrier witnessed something the French Open had never quite felt before.
I love the Filipino fans too, and I feel a little bit adopted when I play doubles with her.
The roar of a nation arriving all at once, Filipino flags, Filipino voices, an ocean away from Manila, and they were everywhere. Alex Eala, 20 years old, ranked 38 in the world, seated nowhere on the draw sheet, had just walked off that court having done what nobody outside the Philippines genuinely believed she would do on this day. She had just eliminated Iva Jovic, the world number 17, the player Novak Djokovic himself had looked at and declared a future world number 1. The scoreline will live in Philippine sports history, but the story of how it happened and why every single person in tennis should have seen it coming starts 4 days earlier in a city 400 miles away when the world briefly wrote Alex Eala off. 72 hours before that match, the headlines were not kind. Eala had just lost in Strasbourg, her final clay warm-up, her last chance to arrive in Paris with momentum, and she left that court having surrendered a first-set lead she should have converted. One outlet called it arguably the most disappointing result of her clay swing. This was her second French Open main draw. Her first, in 2025, ended in a first-round loss to Emiliana Arango, a match she wanted desperately to erase. And now, after 4 days of practice and silence and preparation, the draw had handed her the one name no algorithm, no pundit, no ranking model said she should beat. Here is what the tennis world decided before this match started. Iva Jovic wins, full stop. The logic was airtight on paper. Jovic had just come off the best result of her career, a quarterfinal run at the Australian Open in January 2026, where she carved through the draw until Aryna Sabalenka closed the door in straight sets. She had Charleston. She had momentum. She had the backing of the most decorated player in the history of this sport, Novak Djokovic, who had watched her matches, analyzed her game personally, and told the world, this player will be number 1. Tennishead.net looked at Eala's side of the draw and wrote plainly that it had not been kind to her. And then there was the surface. Red clay, Roland Garros red clay, the slowest, heaviest, most punishing variant of a surface. Jovic herself admitted she barely knew how to navigate just a couple of years ago. Yet even with that acknowledged weakness, she arrived in Paris as a seed, as the favorite, as the chosen one. Eala arrived as the obstacle to be cleared. That framing was the match's first mistake. The morning of May 22, 2026, 2 days before the first ball was struck at Roland Garros, Filipino fans were already at Court 4, not for a match, for a practice session. A BSCBN Sports documented it. Fans packing the seats, cameras out, voices rising on every clean winner Eala struck in warm-up. This was not a tournament day. This was a Tuesday morning on a practice court in Paris, and the Philippines had already claimed it. Tournament staff had seen crowd behavior like this from Eala's fan base at the Australian Open, where Tennis Channel ran a dedicated feature on how her supporters took over Court 6. They had seen it in Abu Dhabi, where an entire arena vibrated on match point. They had seen it at Indian Wells, where the BNP Paribas Open officially called her the face of the Philippines. By the time match day arrived, by the time Eala and Jovic walked out onto Philippe Chatrier, the crowd was not a neutral audience. It was an extension of her game. Now put yourself in Iva Jovic's position entering this match. You are ranked 17 in the world. You have Novak Djokovic in your corner personally watching tape and calling you with analysis after your matches. You reached a Grand Slam quarterfinal just 4 months ago, and you are walking onto clay that you have spent years learning to even slide on against a player who spent her formative years training at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Spain, on this exact surface, in this exact culture of grinding clay tennis. The infrastructure of world tennis had spent 2 years building the Jovic narrative. All of it pointed toward her winning this match. None of it accounted for the ground beneath their feet. Jovic's WTA clay record entering Roland Garros 2026 stood at 8 wins and 6 losses. Her hard court record, 28 wins and 15 losses. The gap between those two numbers is not incidental. It is biographical. Her own words from earlier in the season said everything. I didn't know how to slide at all. I didn't know anything about it. Charleston's green clay gave her momentum, but green clay plays faster, harder, closer to hard court tennis. Paris red clay is a different civilization. Her Roland Garros 2025 debut ended in round 2, beaten by Elena Rybakina 6-3, 6-3 without a set taken. She had never won a singles match at this tournament as a seeded player. The hype said Jovic was ready. The red clay of Roland Garros had a different answer waiting. Rome, just weeks before Paris, was where Eala began writing her own answer. She beat Magdalena Fresh in straight sets. Then she beat Wang Xinyu 6-4, 6-3 in a performance rappler called a breakthrough clay win. She then took the court against world number 2 Elena Rybakina and lost 6-4, 6-4, a loss that told a story about proximity. She was not outclassed. She was competitive against the second best player in the world on clay. Monday to Sunday that week in Rome, Eala proved she belonged on this surface at this level. Then came the detail: no coverage properly centered. Eala and Jovic had played doubles together twice in 2026. Auckland, where they defeated Venus Williams, and Alina Svitolina on their way to the semifinals. Indian Wells, again as partners. You do not play doubles with someone without learning how they breathe under pressure, how they construct a point from the baseline, where their second serve sits, how they react when a rally goes long. Eala had not just studied Jovic from across a net. She had stood at the same net side by side, watching everything, and none of the pre-match analysis factored that in. You saw what was coming. The people who had been watching Alex Eala all season, through Abu Dhabi, through Indian Wells, through Rome, already understood that this result was not a shock. It was an arrival. There is a quote that, in retrospect, reads like prophecy. Iva Jovic, ranked 17 in the world, Djokovic-backed, seated at Roland Garros for the first time in her career, sat down with Tennis Channel at the Miami Open in 2026 and talked about what it was like to play doubles alongside Alex Eala. She did not talk about tactics. She did not talk about clay or rankings. She said, I told her that I was like,
Alex, y'all. I know, it's amazing. I told her that. I was like, dude, I'm so excited for this doubles because I love the Filipino fans too.
dude, I'm so excited for this doubles because I'm about to have like the most support I've ever had for a tennis match. So I know they're there for her, but I love the Filipino fans too, and I feel a little bit adopted when I play doubles with her. Read that again. The player that every tennis media outlet had picked to win this match, who had Novak Djokovic personally analyzing her footage, who had a Grand Slam quarterfinal on her 2026 resume, was telling the world that she had never felt a fan base like Alex Eala's. She wanted to borrow it. She felt adopted by it. That quote came from the opponent, not from a commentator, not from a Filipino sports outlet, from Iva Jovic herself, months before they were drawn against each other at Roland Garros. On match day, those fans were not available for borrowing. They belonged to one player, and the weight of that was the sound of Philippe Chatrier, filled with voices that had crossed oceans to be there, was something no ranking system had ever found a way to measure. What happened at Roland Garros on that day in May 2026 was not just a first-round result in a Grand Slam draw. It was a structural event in the history of where tennis champions come from. The WTA Tour was built around certain nations. The maps of the draw sheets across the last 50 years read like a geography lesson in traditional tennis power. The United States, Russia, the Czech Republic, Spain, Germany, Australia, Southeast Asia had no Grand Slam tradition, no WTA 1000 host, no heritage infrastructure. The sport was never designed with Manila in mind. Alex Eala's run at Roland Garros 2026, starting with this result against the number 17 seed, represents something the WTA's organizers are now being forced to acknowledge. The next generation of tennis fans and the next generation of champions is not arriving from the expected directions. The draw ahead of Eala after Jovic includes Emma Navarro or Janice Chien in round 2, then Naomi Osaka as a potential round 3 opponent, and Aryna Sabalenka looming in round 4. Each match is a larger story. Each match is another chapter in a saga that the sport did not script but cannot now ignore. After Paris, the grass court season opens. Birmingham is next, where Eala is confirmed on the entry list, on a surface that rewards the flat, fast hitting she has shown all year. The rankings will reflect what Roland Garros 2026 produced. A deep run pushes Eala back toward or past her career high of number 29. Every point won on Philippe Chatrier is a point scored for a country that was told implicitly and explicitly for decades that this level was not meant for them. 4 days before Paris, Strasbourg, May 18, 2026, Eala won the first set 6-3. She had Oleinikova where she wanted her, then the second set tightened, went to 5-7, and before she could reset, the third slipped away 3-6. ESPN ran the headline, Alex Eala crashes out early at Strasbourg Open. Her final warm-up before Roland Garros ended in a collapse she could not explain away with good portions of bad luck. Tennishead.net did not soften it. What she did next tells you everything. She did not withdraw from Paris. She did not change her preparation or disappear from public view. By May 22nd, 4 days later, she was on court 4 at Roland Garros working through practice while Filipino fans packed every available seat around her. In her pre-tournament statement published on the Roland Garros official website, she said, "I'm finding my footing and I know that I can do well. I'm a much better player physically and mentally than I was last year, and we've really been working hard, my team and I. And hopefully the things we've been working on will reflect more on my game." She did not claim to have solved everything. She did not promise a result. She said she was working. She said she was better. And then she walked out onto the most famous clay court in the world and proved both things at once. The fans were on court 4 before the tournament began. That is where this story starts. Iva Jovic told the world she wanted to borrow that support. That is where the irony lives. And Eala walked onto Philippe Chatrier 4 days removed from a Strasbourg headline that called her exit a crash. That is where the character was confirmed. Alex Eala did not stumble into this result. She built it over every clay court she trained on in Spain, every match she ground through in Rome, every game she watched from the doubles court alongside the very player she would have to dismantle. The tennis world handed her the hardest possible opening draw and the clearest possible narrative of who was supposed to win. She walked onto that court and answered both. This is what a nation looks like when it finally has a player who belongs at every table tennis has set, and then refuses to just sit politely. The Filipinos who flooded Paris did not come to hope. They came because they already knew. Now the question belongs to the rest of the draw. Can Alex Eala go deeper at Roland Garros 2026 through Navarro, through Osaka, through Sabalenka, or does the mountain get too steep from here? Drop your prediction in the comments right now. How far does she go? Every match Eala plays from this point at Roland Garros is a story we are covering in full. The doubles subplot with Jovic, the potential Osaka showdown, the rankings chase back toward number 29 and beyond. If you are not subscribed yet, you are already watching this saga one step behind everyone else who is. Press subscribe and stay in the front row, because this French Open is nowhere near finished writing itself.